At 22, as a lieutenant fighting for the Union in the Civil War, he displayed the gallantry and courage under fire that would earn him the Congressional Medal of Honor. 40 years later, as a Major General, he designed and patented the badge that we recognize today as the same Congressional Medal of Honor. This is the story of George Gillespie, patriot, soldier, engineer, and inventor. My name is Matt Lappel. I'm a registered patent attorney, and this is Inventing History, because history isn't just made, it is invented. Our inventor, George, was only 16 when he enrolled at West Point as a cadet. His father was a merchant and farmer who had only modest means to support his family of 6 back in Tennessee. But George was hardworking and diligent and worked his way through 3 years at West Point. Then, the Civil War broke out. It was 1861 and George was 20 years old. He had to make a decision that would affect the rest of his life. His home state of Tennessee seceded from the Union. Some of his best friends left West Point to go fight for the Confederacy. George stayed. In June 1861, George graduated from West Point and received a commission as second lieutenant with the Army Corps of Engineers. They would be building roads and bridges and constructing defenses around Washington, D.C. They all knew that. But they were also on the front lines in active combat. George came under enemy fire at the Battle of Fredericksburg in 1862, where he had to build pontoon bridges. In 1863, George was defending the Union base of operations at Gettysburg. 6 months later, George was at the Battle of Cold Harbor outside of Richmond, Virginia. With the Union and the Confederate armies encircling one another, 22-year-old George volunteered to sneak across enemy lines to take orders from Major General George Meade to General Philip Sheridan, the commander of the Union cavalry. It was a harrowing mission. George was captured and escaped, only to be held at gunpoint again, only to escape again under withering gunfire. He delivered his general's message and would later be awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery. He rose in rank to become a lieutenant colonel by the end of the war, then stayed with the Army Corps of Engineers building lighthouses and fortifications from New Hampshire to Illinois, from Oregon to New York. Now, during the Civil War, Congress had authorized a military medal to recognize those who distinguished themselves with, quote, gallantry in action. Military veterans were allowed to nominate each other for acts of wartime heroism. All in all, about 500 Medals of Honor were awarded in the last decade of the 1800s, including one to George in recognition of the daring do of that 22-year-old at Cold Harbor, Virginia in 1864. With the passage of years, the Medal of Honor became the most cherished and recognizable award for military valor. So much so that, when veterans groups began to award private medals and membership badges at memorials and reunions, they turned most often to the Medal of Honor for inspiration. One fraternal organization, the Grand Army of the Republic, or GAR, issued a membership badge that was almost identical to the Civil War-era Medal of Honor. Political leaders took notice and responded to public concern. All veterans should be respected, but the flood of similar-looking badges, awarded for service rather than for extreme courage under fire, threatened to dilute the public respect for the Medal of Honor. In 1901, George, now the Chief of Engineers, was directed to redesign the Medal of Honor by the Secretary of War. 3 years later, Congress formally gave its approval to George's Medal of Honor design. But while his design was being reviewed by Congress, George, being clever, also submitted a design patent application to the U.S. Patent Office. For the purposes of this story, it's important to know what a design patent is. Design patents protect the ornamental features of an article of manufacture. In other words, a design patent prevents people from making copies that look too much like the original product. People applying for design patents are usually trying to stop large-scale copying of products made using, for example, a mold. For the Medal of Honor, George just called his application a design for a badge. It shows a helmeted goddess, Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, on a 5-pointed star encircled by a wreath. George's design features a light blue ribbon with 13 stars, one for each of the original 13 states. A bar connecting the ribbon to the medal reads Valor. The U.S. Patent Office issued the design patent in November of 1904. President Teddy Roosevelt then signed an executive order requiring the medal to be presented at a formal ceremony. After that, George transferred the design patent to the Secretary of War for safekeeping. Remarkably, George never made a penny from his patent. In 1913, he passed away and was laid to rest in the military cemetery at West Point. When George's patent expired in 1923, Congress passed a law to prohibit the unauthorized wearing, making, or sale of military medals. Since then, each branch of the military has adopted a unique design for its Medal of Honor recipients. The Army medal remains largely unchanged from George's design. The Navy medal uses the original image of Minerva holding a shield against evil, hanging from an anchor. The Air Force medal uses an image of the Statue of Liberty, hung from the Air Force's wings and lightning bolts design. In all, 3,528 heroes have received the Medal of Honor. Only 61 are still with us today. Most people think that patents are for protecting the valuable innovations that drive revenue, growth, and profit. Normally, that is true. To me, George Gillespie's design patent shows us the power of American patent law to protect something more than money. George recognized that American patent law can be used to protect a public good, specifically our nation's ability to single out and recognize the extraordinary valor of heroic military members who served our country above and beyond the call of duty. If you'd like more information about the Congressional Medal of Honor and any of its 3,528 recipients, please go to the Congressional Medal of Honor Society website at cmohs.org. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your service. I wish you a peaceful Veterans Day.